Hey, what's up? I'm Phable, and today I show you how I approach modern music production with analog outboard gear. The topic today is analog kick drums that you use mainly for deep house, techno, and those like really grimy techno tracks that you are listening to right now. I will use the Elysia Karacter 500, which is a really nice saturation magic box for me, but you can replicate this workflow with your standard plugins. There's also an Elysia Karacter 500 plugin out there, but use what you like, and what the heck, let's just get some things going and I show you how I approach techno kick drums.
Before we continue, let me give you a quick rundown of the Karacter 500. This is the 500 module version, obviously. There's also a full 19-inch rack version available, but I like the form factor of the 500. That's why it sits here right in front of me. The Karacter is a saturation unit. It's a stereo saturator that has 3 different types of saturation built into that. So if you have nothing activated down here, you have the so-called mastering type or mastering grade saturation. A saturation that I would describe as really subtle sometimes, but it rounds off the transients really nicely and works just like a charm on certain sounds. Has a really nice touch to that. If you're going down here and activate the FET Shred, then you get a tube-inspired saturation, which has more drive, more oomph, more aggressiveness to it. Really lovely on drum sounds and the drum bus. And if that is not enough for you, you have the Turbo Boost. And the Turbo Boost gives you a more aggressive and more dirty sound, even more, you know, really, really cool. So these are the 3 saturation modes, but that's not all. You also have 3 types of operation. You can use the Karacter 500 either as a stereo unit, obviously, so you have the left-hand side to control the left and the right channel. Then there is the dual mono, meaning you can have independent left and right side as one and channel 2. So these can then work in a different fashion. For example, if you have a kick drum here and a snare drum and they need independent settings, then that works like a charm. And you have an MS mode. And the MS mode gives you the mono signal on the left-hand side and the side and stereo information on the right-hand side. Really cool for the master bus, or if you have more complex sounds that need that special treatment. Okay, now that we've talked about the overall functionality, let me just give you a quick rundown of the parameters. So you have the drive, obviously that's for like the amount of saturation and overdrive. Then down below you have the color, and the color is for me, the frequency selection. So if you go fully to the left, you have a more like low end and mid-range type of saturation. And once you increase the color to the right hand side, you get more of the upper mids and the highs. So really, really cool to blend between those different modes. Then you have the gain for the overall gain of the saturation, because actually what's interesting is you can lose a little bit of volume because you crush the signal, and then you can sort of like have a makeup gain. It's not a makeup gain, but you can compensate for the volume loss. And which is my favorite sometimes, it's the mix control. So you can have the fully dry signal and go back to a full wet signal. Great for parallel types of compression. You can really give smack and aggressiveness to the drum bus and then just blend it to the original signal. And that gives you a nice style of compression and saturation. Okay, then we should listen now to some sounds. Here I have my kick drum. It's a kick drum from my Yomox M-Bass. Really like that sound, but it's nothing special right now, because we want to go into Technoland today, right? So let me show you how this is done. Okay, we are now at zero drive, fully wet, and I engage now the character. So it gets a little bit louder, the signal, of course, because I haven't set the gain correctly, but let me show you now what I mean when I say lovely saturation. You hear that? This is kind of interesting. You know, you lose some of the high end, but you immediately get some oomph back, some aggressiveness. So that's the color fully to the left, and I can increase now the color, and you hear that. Very aggressive. But I would go for settle setting like this, and then I would use the mix control. So depending on the material that I'm working on, this can work like a charm, you know, like retaining some of the transient you know, that could work without and with. And just to make it more drastic, let me go full. That's really lovely. Just depending on the track that you're working on, this could really gel the track, because the kick drum in techno production or in electronic music is really important. Okay, so this is the mastering style saturation. Let me go to the tube style. And you instantly hear that, right? It's more aggressive, has more bite to it. We lose some volume, so again, I have to go even more into the gain section to compensate for that. So please bear with me. You know, fully level matched sound examples is not really easy right now, but we're getting to that. So that's now with the tube inspired saturation, and if I go into turbo boost, we get a more aggressive sound. Great. You know, that's nothing. You know, I don't get me wrong. Depending on the track, if I'm having a really chill out track, I like that. You know, like top end of the M bass, but this is right where it's at for me right now. If I'm talking about grimy or aggressive sounds and tones for techno and other types of music that utilize those really aggressive kicks. Without the turbo boost, you hear that? You have like really 3 different types of saturation, and you tend to overuse it. So that's a problem. I started to work with the Karacter, and at first it was always too aggressive, too harsh for me. But you actually have to understand how the parameters interact with each other, and then you can really tame the sound of the Karacter, and it doesn't sound that harsh anymore. It gives you a lovely tone, and especially on drums, this is just lovely for me. Oof. You can probably tell that individual sounds work magic on the Karacter, but it gets even more interesting for me once I start to use the whole drum bus, because then the overall drive that I get from all the different elements, they start to interact and start to pump, and this makes it even more interesting for me. So let me go back to my kick drum, but now I just have this more subtle setting, and now let me show you how everything interacts once I start to use other drum elements. is a groove that I did in Ableton, you know, just for that sort of like industrial techno vibe. Instantly it gets more pumping and groove. Starts to interact with each other. All the sounds start to interact. The hi-hats, the groove. And I can emphasize that even more by using the blend control. So now it's full. Tame it a little bit. I'll use it like a 30%. And again, you know, you have the FET Shred. So let me go full blown, and then we go for FET Shred. That smack to it. That's without all the elements, and it falls together, right? It's not that interesting anymore. And that is just a beauty. And then you start to see how everything works once you even go for more drum elements that could work in that scenario. So you try out different things and different settings, right? So maybe let's go for another top hi-hat. Really cool, and you hear how everything interacts with each other. Yeah, okay. And again, you know, you don't have to go full blown. You can use the mix control. I'm kind of surprised that the turbo boost works for me right now. Normally I wouldn't go that aggressive, but really makes sense for me now. Okay, let's add some other elements that I have here. You know, and all that shaker sounds, they go really easily into the saturation, and I love that. But again, you know, I'm mostly on the low end. You hear how the shakers get this like really crunchiness to them. And this could also work if I go for a higher color. But then I have to decrease the mix. But I go out at the turbo boost now. That's the magic of the Karacter for me. By the way, we can also try out the MS mode. The right hand side becomes the stereo information. Let me add just another element that I have here lying around. more wider. In this context, maybe it is a little bit too much. It's crazy how you can independently change the sound of all the elements in that mix. Yeah, let's go back to the stereo mode. Works for me more on that, but again, this is like trying out stuff. Like I said, this setting can be this setup can be duplicated with many other devices. Elysia also has the plugins available on the Plugin Alliance website, so there's an emulation of the Karacter 500. Try that out. Man, I just love the sound. It's so freaking good on so many materials. Let me take out some of the shakers. Yeah. Again, there are the plugin emulations available. Try them out for yourself. All I can say is you get a really nice sound once you start try to use saturation to your advantage. And the fun of touching the knobs and fiddling around with settings is just something everybody should do at some point in his musical career or musical hobby, whatever. Okay guys, I hope this was helpful. Write me in the comment section what you would like to see next, and I will play a little bit with those settings just because it's so fun.